kind of try to get
Saturday.
enough of the way that.
I'd like to call the January Board of Education to order. I'd like everyone to stand and recite the pledge with us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Keeley makes that motion. May I have a second? Charles. Mr. Quinn seconds it. All those in favor? 6-0, Megan. Citizen participation, Dr. Henry.
We had no one submit citizens' participation for this evening, Mr. President.
Item 4, written communications.
Had no written communications either.
Item 5, citizens update. Mr. Bardell, command representative.
Hello, Mr. President. I've got 3 short announcements. Registration is currently open for lifeguard classes through 29 January. The class is open to individuals that are 15 years and older. There's a pretest associated with that. It's on the 2nd of February. Interested patrons or participants may register at Davison Fitness Center or call 573-596-4359 for further information. Tickets for the annual Father-Daughter Dance at Fort Leonard Wood are currently on sale at the ITR office, which is located in the PX Mini Mall in Fort Leonard Wood. Historically, tickets sold out quickly. It's about 600 people that attend that, and the dance is held on 10 February at Nutter Fieldhouse. The last note I'd like to make is that we're on the 3rd of February, we're doing a hiring fair. It'll be from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock at the Waynesville Career Center. Several agencies will be represented, from AmeriCorps Vista, the Army Air Force Exchange System, and MWR. Type of positions we're looking at are everything from lifeguards to recreation aides, internships, marketing, advertisement. Really, we're looking at hiring people on site. And so that'll be on the 3rd of February at the Waynesville Career Center. Some positions are permanent and some positions will be for the summer. Some positions you can apply at 16 years old and some 18 and older. But we're looking at doing the interviewing right there on the spot. So we're encouraging people to come out. We're doing it here in the Waynesville Career Center just because of the location and our attempts to try to get some of these summer, or some of the jobs filled for the summer for our young people. So that's all we had. So
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Item 5B, district announcements. Dr. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Later this evening, well, first of all, we had WHS to be recognized this evening, but we had a little old man winter throw a curveball into that, so we will be moving WHS and student recognitions to the February meeting. Later in the agenda, we'll be recognizing our school board members for their service as part of the Missouri School Board Recognition Week. But before we do that, I just want to personally thank all of you for the work you do for our district. being a board member and elected to serve and volunteer, the countless hours you have for the zero pay that you receive is very, very difficult. So we really appreciate that. And we also appreciate, Mr. Bardell, the work that you do in serving as our liaison. So thank you very much. Volunteering is an important aspect of community service, and hundreds of our students participated in the Martin Luther King Jr. Day of Service activities to make a difference in our community. I'd like to especially thank AmeriCorps Vista members and staff for leading these service learning activities. Because of the snow day today, Waynesville schools will be in session on Wednesday, May 23rd. Graduation remains May 18th. February 16th will be a half day of school for students and a half day in service, provided we don't have 10 inclement weather days to make up between now and then. Emphasize, underline, we will observe the President's Day holiday on February the 19th. Spring break will be on March 12th through the 16th. Those dates are protected.
Thank you. Item 6A, bid recommendations. Dr. Berger.
Yeah, just the single bid, Mr. President. I think fairly routine month for House 40, some cabinetry.
All right, item 6, are there any questions or anything on the bids? Financials, Dr. Berger.
Thank you, Mr. President. January 10th, 2018, Bank of Crocker, all accounts held the Bank of Crocker, but in the MOSIP account, $35,515,227.64. CDs, $10.5 million. General account, $2,296,959.60. Payroll account, $1,537.03. Total funds, $48,313,724.27.
Thank you. Any questions? In the consent items, we have study sessions from December 18th, the regular session from December 18th, and the closed session from December 18th. I need a motion to approve the consent items as presented.
Motion.
Mr. Schultz makes that motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Anderson makes a second. All those in favor? 6-0, Megan. All right. Item 9A, school board recognition. Dr. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you can see by the gifts in front of you, like a lavish, or beside you or behind you now, we do have board appreciation this month, and unfortunately, as Mrs. Long reminded me yesterday evening, I think this is 2 years in a row that we've had to have an inclement weather day on board recognition. So while the fanfare, there may not be a whole lot out here tonight, certainly the love is shared through all of the gifts and candy. I know most of you are very, very healthy and you don't want to eat all of that, so we're willing to take that over to the district administration building and deposit that for you. Also, we did have a speaker coming in from MSBA, but unfortunately he had a scheduling conflict, and he will be at the Springfield Board of Education tonight, which so proof that others are meeting as well. So I had a few words for the board, and then we have some special recognition for you. Tonight we recognize the efforts and leadership of our Board of Education and the critical role they play in the operation of the Waynesville R6 School District. Being a school board member is a very difficult job that involves the complexities of addressing local, state, and national educational interests to provide the highest quality of education to each student in our district. Upon earning a seat on the Board of Education, school board members give up a significant amount of time, a great deal of privacy, and place themselves in the public's eye by serving on a governing entity that impacts our community's most precious resource, which is obviously our children. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to serve with this outstanding group of elected officials throughout this school year. In our world today, it has become all too common to witness unhealthy dissension that diverts the attention of a governing body from its purpose of serving its constituents for the betterment of the organization. Our board members focus on what is in the best interest of the students that we serve, and they carry no agendas that prevent an exclusive focus on the best possible learning environment for the young people in our district. These members understand the importance of working together, staying above the fray that can arise from the pursuit of individual interests and political infighting. Our board works as a team while bringing their unique perspective to each of the issues we encounter in the district. Through their professional collaboration, our students have benefited in numerous ways, and I'm going to read just a few over the last year and a half or so. Passage of Proposition 1, which played a critical role in ensuring vital B2 funding for the next decade, which supports capital improvements throughout our district and allows other funds to flow directly to instruction. Our highest annual performance report scores have occurred over the past 4 years in our school district. The renovation of Waynesville Middle School, which the Waynesville Middle School faculty would argue was a very, very important piece and long-awaited one for our school district. Significant growth in all college and career readiness indicators assessed by the state of Missouri. Our district contributed to our community's recognition as a great American defense community. The first district in Missouri to receive the National Math and Science Initiative's College Readiness Grant, resulting in significant gains in advanced placement qualifying scores. One of the first districts in the country to receive a continuation grant from the National Math and Science Initiative, and that little project of reorganizing our elementary schools into K-5 grade spans last year. And there are many, many more accomplishments, and we truly appreciate the innovative thinking of our board and support of these things that help our students. With a blend of former educators, businessmen, engineers, community members, and soldiers, our board reflects the unique characteristics of our community. It's clear that our Board of Education serves kids, and our district excels as a result of this service. So with that, I say thank you to our Board of Education. Your service to our kids is truly appreciated. And at this time, we will present a certificate recognizing your contributions from the Missouri School Boards Association. And then you have to come up here and take a picture with me. 2 pictures. You want a group and individual photo?
Please.
She's going to direct you. Mary Ann will direct you once you get up here. First, we'll recognize Butch O'Reilly, President of the Board of Education. You better listen to the boss there.
Butch.
Mr. O'Reilly, if I could have you.
She's playing with fire there. It's picture time. Okay, so now we have Paul Schultz, Vice President.
And if you'll just stand right over there with Mr. O'Reilly.
Dr. Leroy Fulmer, Secretary. Mr. Charles Quinn, Treasurer. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide all the way. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Bleed roll time.
Mike Keeling, Board Member. Don't hurt his hip. He's going to miss golf.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Cut it.
I'm gonna go back to my seat, Mary Ann.
Uh-oh. Andy Anderson, Board Member.
He's low already, we gotta go up.
And do you wish to have your hat on in the picture? Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right.
Because you can't see that.
Okay, so may I have all my board members?
We have Mr. Bardell too.
yes.
And we also want to mention Dan Deering. Dan cannot be with us this evening. He is in a much warmer place. Good for Dan. And also we have Mr. Wayne Bardell, who serves as our liaison with Fort Leonard Wood. Thank you, Mr. Bardell.
Now, can I have all of these?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Bardell?
We're gonna be, you know.
Double dip.
First time in 3 years I wear jeans one of these pictures.
I know.
Oh, no.
Can I have,
I'll make you look skinny.
you step on forward a little bit? Can I have you step forward just a little bit? Have you step forward? No, Mr. Bardell's going to the back.
This will get right here perfect.
I think these two.
We'll do a,
Unified, all
Which
that
two?
done.
we'll do a U.
Want to carry, have Butch lean over sideways and carry him?
If you'll fill in right there, that'll be perfect. Sir, okay. There we go. Everybody looking this way. All right. Oop, I'm losing you. Yep. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm happy.
That's unusual.
We go.
Never gonna forget that.
Well, I'd just like to say on behalf of the board, and other board members can say something, we appreciate all the fine gifts and stuff that you've given us. But truly, we serve the students, the parents, and the teachers of this district, and we're happy to do that. And I don't think we ever fuss very much anyway, but I think it's a real good board and an outstanding board, and we're really happy that we can have this opportunity to serve. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah,
a
thank
lot.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do it for the gifts.
Item 10A, mid-year performance update, Dr. Atkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening. Tonight I'm going to share the data for our mid-year assessments, data for the district writing prompt, standards proficiency through the end of first semester, and mid-year STAR assessment results will be reviewed. The district writing prompt is utilized across the grade levels 4 times per year to measure student progress in writing towards mastery of end-of-year writing standards. The writing prompt presents the student with unfamiliar text, which they then respond to. This is similar to what a student would see on state assessments as well as in real life, where we are teaching students to read information they come in contact with and respond to the information. The writing prompt is assessed in 3 areas. Area 1 is question. This assesses students' ability to develop an idea that addresses the topic of the prompt. In the area of question, 59.1% of students were proficient as compared to 43.4% at the end of first quarter. The end of year goal is 80% of students scoring in the proficient range. Area 2 of the writing prompt is text evidence. This assesses the student's ability to respond to the prompt using specific and relevant text-based details. 60% of students were proficient in this area on prompt 2 as compared to 41.8% on prompt 1. Area 3 looks at students' use of grade level appropriate conventions. District-wide, 51.7% of students were proficient on prompt 2 as compared to 41.2% of students on prompt 1. The Step Up to Writing program was implemented during second quarter and will continue to be utilized to support writing instruction. The end of course exam for English 10 will utilize a new type of writing prompt this year. Traditionally, students have been given a passage or a source document, and they were required to respond utilizing one specific type of writing, such as narrative, persuasive, or opinion. With the new format, students will be given several source documents, such as a newspaper article, as well as information from a website. Students will then respond using 2 types of response, such as narrative and opinion. This is called a blended response, as 2 types of writing are blended together. Additionally, students will need to support their responses by formally or informally citing the source documents. Since this is a shift in how writing has been typically taught and assessed, our English 9 and English 10 classes are administering blended prompts as their district writing assessment. Students are assessed in the areas of blending writing genres, content development, conventions, organizational structure, and use of resources. This slide looks at student proficiency on standards. At the end of second quarter, students in pre-K through grade 6 had an overall proficiency rate on assessed ELA standards of 60.4% as compared to 41.2% at the end of first quarter. Many of the assessed standards are year-long standards. Our CSIP goal is for 80% of students to be proficient or advanced at the end of the year. Teachers track progress on each assessed grade level standard and utilize that information to adjust instruction. At the end of second quarter, students in pre-K through 6 had an overall proficiency on assessed math standards of 72.3% as compared to 61.3% at the end of first quarter. In math, we see a mix of year-long and shorter-term standards, which helps to account for the higher mid-year numbers in math as compared to ELA. Our CSIP goal is for 80% of students to be proficient or advanced at the end of the year. At the middle school level, mid-year standards proficiency exceeded 60% for all core content classes. The high school continues a transition to standards-based assessments. Some content areas are further along in the transition process than others. Algebra 1 performance continues to be an area of focus as we work to support students in the area of math. English 10 scores are inconsistent with other English courses. This is a process-related issue more so than a student performance issue, and the process continues to be refined so that more accurate data can be collected and reported in English 10. The STAR Early Literacy Assessment is utilized to assess the early literacy skills of kindergarten students. The percent of students meeting the expected benchmark increased for all buildings from the beginning of the year through the mid-year administration. East showed scale score growth of 127 points, Freedom showed 77 points of growth, Partridge had 94 points of growth, Thayer was at 105 points of growth, and Wood had 89 points of growth. The STAR reading test assesses students in the area of reading. All students in grades 1 through 8 are assessed 3 times per year. The percentage of students meeting the benchmark at each grade level ranged from 58 to 76%. Growth was made from the beginning of the year assessment to the mid-year assessment in all grade levels. Scores for last year were not included for comparison as scores were renormed by Renaissance Learning over the summer, which makes year-to-year comparisons unreliable. This slide represents the percentage of students who met the STAR reading benchmark at each elementary building and is broken down further by grade level. This slide depicts the average STAR reading scale score by grade level. A fairly consistent pattern of growth can be seen through 8th grade. The list to the right shows the scale score needed to meet the benchmark. At all grade levels, the average scale score exceeds the mid-year benchmark level. This slide shows the average scale score by building at the elementary level. Across the board, the average scale scores exceeded the mid-year benchmark cut scores. This slide shows the average grade level equivalency at each grade level. In most grade levels, an average of a half year's growth was made from the beginning of the year to mid-year administration. And this slide shows the breakdown by building. The STAR Math test assessed students in the area of mathematics. All students in grades 1 through 8 are assessed. The percentage of students meeting the benchmark at each grade level ranged from 64% to 90%. Growth was made from the beginning of the year assessment to mid-year assessment in all grade levels. And as with reading, the 2016 scores were not included for comparison due to renorming that made the comparisons unreliable. This chart shows the percentage of students meeting the benchmark and is broken down by grade level and elementary building. This slide depicts the average math scale score by grade level. A fairly consistent pattern of growth can be seen through 5th grade, at which point scores begin to level out. The list to the right shows the scale score needed to meet the benchmark. At all grade levels, the average scale score exceeds the expected benchmark level. This slide shows the average scale score by building at the elementary level, and as with reading across the board, the average scale scores exceeded the fall benchmark cut score. All grade levels met or exceeded an average of a half year's growth from the beginning of the year to the mid-year administration. And at the elementary level, in each building, the average grade level equivalency met or exceeded the tested grade level. This data is monitored at the collaborative team level during our Wednesday late start mornings, at the building level, as well as by the district leadership team, and is used to make adjustments in our instructional planning, as well as making decisions about needed curriculum adjustments. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Dr. Atkins. Item 10B, proposed job description, first reading, Mrs. Bales.
Thank you, Mr. President. The following attached proposed job descriptions are presented for your review as first reading. 4.05.1, school bus driver. 4.06.2, bus mechanic. 5.02.3, school bus aide. Administration will request approval at the February meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Action items, 11A, revision 18 budget. Dr. Berger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Everything's been moving pretty quickly tonight. I'll bog it down just a little bit here, but try to get through it in a somewhat timely fashion. But I'd like to start by saying that, our budget document, it can be intimidating at 114 pages. You all have copies of it, but it's pretty easy when we break it down by site code and we just start looking at it more specifically. We're a fairly large district with several sites, but it all kind of comes together. But I say that just to, suggest to you that if you have any questions, I know we hit on this several times throughout the year, but if we had a patron that asked a question, we have hard copies available in the office, and I'd be more than willing to go through that with anybody who wished to. As you can see from my title slide here, we'll do a little bit of Prop 1. That'll go really quickly. I'll just touch on the ASBR. We'll also look at that once again at mid-year retreat, and then we'll get into the budget revision document. Starting off with this Prop 1, I've been kind of riding this horse as long as we can because it's such a positive. We passed that last year and kept our B2, our heavily impacted funding, safe by increasing our local effort. And the impressive thing was our community really stepped up and approved that at a 71% approval rate. Oh goodness, let's see. Something happened with that slide, so I'll have to fill you in here. But well, I don't know if there's enough there for me to fill you in. But apologize for that slide. I know it's okay on your laptop because you can see it. But what we did was we made B2 safe for 10 years, and if you would have looked in about this year, we're in fiscal year 18 and 19, the discussions Dr. Henry and I were initially having and then we brought to you were that our projections of falling out of B2 were very conservative. So when our trend line hit the area where we were going to be in trouble was about that FY18, FY19, thinking that we might be able to hang on for a couple more years. Our whole fiscal outlook would look so much different if our patrons wouldn't have stepped up at this point. And like I said, we feel confident we've got that safe on that element of B2 for a decade. We'll have to be revisited at that time, likely, but we'll keep monitoring data, monitoring local efforts of other school districts and see where we're at, and we'll provide you some input on our B2 eligibility each year. So we're feeling very confident with that, thank goodness to our patrons. One issue in that was, though, it also generated that local effort to the tune of about $600,000. That's the formula, it's simplified, but that $300,000 represents AV, assessed value. It actually is a little bit higher than that. That 20 cents represents what was at issue in Proposition 1. The formula, it generated $600,000. what were we going to do? We campaigned on these two commitments. We felt we felt it very important to come back to our patrons and be able to easily go into the budget and say, where did that money go? Did we fulfill our promise? And yes, we did. It changed a little bit, but not much. It's just in, what the bids came back in and what the priorities have evolved, and they didn't evolve much. But FY17 is previous year, and that is money already allocated, and it was also allocated once again in FY18. So we call that new money of $233,000 committed to safety as an FY18 supplement. We did not supplant that money, we supplemented it. And you can see how that plays out there in the updated budget and where we spent that money. May evolve just a little bit more as we finish out the year, but for the most part, it's going to stay right there. This same thing in technology, the $580,000 up here was in FY17. Again, that made the budget in FY18, and this was what we called the supplement. We can pull that out of the budget by line item and show where those items went to. And that one changed very little from the campaign commitment. This is a great stat. Hope this resonates among our patrons. If any one slide, the Proposition 1 is behind us, but keep in mind our patrons still get quite a value for their local effort. 93% of the districts in our state have a higher tax rate than Waynesville R6. Kind of transitioning to the SBR, the reason why I wanted to just do a little touch base on this was typically in the retreat over the summer, we will have the SBR finalized. We were just short of finalized when we took this to retreat this last summer, so I wanted to come back. This is easily found on the DESE webpage. All those numbers are going to match this, but if there's one document to look at from an overview, kind of that 10,000-foot view, is the ASBR. That's the fiscal condition of the district at year's end. And a couple of places to look are ending balances and total expenditure. And so ending balances, if we took that amount and divided it by the incidental plus the teacher's fund, that sum, you would get a percentage. And that percentage is going to be 24.75%, which is easily 3 months operation expenditures, and that is what's recommended. Our auditors even are at the point now where they're making the statement of recommendation on reserves. That's relatively new, and they recommend 20 to 25% reserves. Our district policy calls out that if we fall below 20% reserves, we are to take measures to remedy that issue, to get back up to the 20%. So we'll close at the 24.75%. On the SBR, the calculation is always done right here below, and I'll bring a hard copy of that at our mid-year retreat here on February 1st. Another number to look at is our capital outlay reserves. We'll talk a little bit more about that at retreat, but there is no percentage recommended by auditors. It really is based strictly on district needs. Some districts will run a lot lower, some districts will run a lot higher, and of course, from previous discussions, we know this capital outlay, this Fund 4, that column, this sum ending balance is going to be reduced drastically due to Waynesville Middle School, and we'll touch a little further on that later in the presentation. ASBR, go back to that slide. Like I said, that's in the February board retreat, and we'll look at that again, make notes, ask a question if you have any. But that is the single document. Like if we were studying another district, we'd quickly go to their ASBR, and I can tell you with some amount of confidence what kind of fiscal condition that district is in. So then that brings us to January vision. So what do we do? I want to bring out one more point here. I love bringing out this point. This debt service, Fund 1, 2, 3, and 4. Debt service for us is our debt through general obligation bonds. We have zero. And we've talked a lot about, I thought we're able to really educate our public in understanding that we have no debt service. That's a really great position for the district to be in. Obviously, the 25% reserves and healthy Fund 4 reserves as well allow us to operate. And I should say one last time before we leave that part of the presentation, without Proposition 1, all that changes, all of it. So what do we do at January Vision? Really, Fund 1, 2, and 4, because remember, no debt service in Fund 3, but we look at all the changes in classified salaries are the big driver in changes for Fund 1. In Fund 2, it's the certified salaries. That's going to drive almost all the changes. And Fund 4 typically won't change too much on the expenditure side. from July to January, but I am asking for a sizable amendment, and it'll have its own slide that I'll detail out in just a moment. Revenues will change quite a bit, but they're not huge dollar amount changes. They're just several changes. And really, this fiscal year, the revenue stream has been pretty constant. There's not a lot of noise from at least the state. There's some new noise with the government impending shutdown for federal revenues, and that's where we start. You can see this drops off, but keep in mind this is a budget number, and our strategy has always been budget very conservatively for impact aid, just for the reason that is upon us this week. And I haven't been following Twitter today, but you know, well known in the news as government shutdown. The only reason why we made budget last year was a request for early payment. So you know, we'll shortly, you know, in the next few weeks, I'll be in contact with the Department of Education, Impact Aid, and we may choose to request an early payment again. Last year we were only two districts, one of only two districts that required that, B2 districts, that requested that, and were granted that request. State revenues are in pretty good shape. I'll save, you know, not blast too much commentary out regarding next year's forecast for this presentation, but this year everything's pretty solid, and I would even say that my basic formula dollars are still a tad bit conservative, even at January revision. Local revenue, you'll see that bumped up, and there's a reason why. Local tax. We added 20 cents, about a $600,000 change from the actual year of last year to budgeted this year, and a little bit of tick up in Prop C, but overall, you know, you're going to see that most of that increase under local revenue is going to be because of Proposition 1. Other revenue can kind of be a little bit erratic. It can be, you know, one year things that come to mind are insurance settlements, when Slaughter Field flooded, E-rate. We had a big E-rate expenditure of about $1 million in a previous year, so nothing concerns me there, even though that's dropped off. Employee salary and benefits expenses, you know, some things that come to mind there was we did realize a 6% increase in health insurance last year. 6% in the broad, you know, 10-year outlook is not terrible. 6%. Our previous years, we had seen a decline actually in our insurance premium, and had some modest increases for a couple years. So 6% was a little more than what we were used to, and we did a 1% increase on the salary schedule. But anyway, so trending up, but we expected it to, and it has actually this is reeled back in just a little bit from July's budget. Expenses in purchase services and supplies, we've made a transition over the last few years with some reliance on purchase services. The two things that come to mind mostly are PenMac and OPA, two big cost drivers there. Capital projects, there will be a slide that will explain this just a little bit. I think the board is going to be well in tune with this, but of course, we've got this big spike here, and that's going to be Waynesville Middle School. And we're fortunate enough to have that those funds in the teal, and we'll be able to pay those out. Speak to that just a little bit, maybe my next slide, maybe. Yeah. So our contract total in Waynesville Middle School is $18 million. For the budget, whenever I wrote the budget, we had a pretty good idea and thought I'd need an amendment in January, if not a little bit later. I'm going to go ahead and take care of it now, move that number to $18 million. It's a $6 million increase, and that will satisfy nearly all of the Waynesville Middle School needs in terms of the pay apps that'll come through. If we have a little bit hanging, and I anticipate we will, it'll fall into the next fiscal year, which will be July 1. So make a little adjustment. If we do need the funds in this current year, I'm somewhat anticipating a possible May budget revision, and we'll at least have a small budget revision in June to close the year. So we'll capture that then. Currently, we're about halfway out. I think we're up to about $9 million less retainage on our pay apps, and we had a current pay app that's reflective in your board action tonight of $1.3 million. So we're a little past halfway point in terms of the days scheduled for the project, and from a fiscal perspective, we're at just about the halfway point at about $9 million. DHA will be present potentially during the February retreat to speak briefly about that too, so they can field some questions if you have any. Food service expenditure, so there's a good trend on the expenditure side of starting to fall off just a little bit. Transportation expenditure, would say that right here, I have parked a couple things that I slid over to transportation that inflated that just a little bit. One was the $100,000 GPS system that we'll be implementing a little bit on a pilot basis this spring. So our bus will be equipped with GPS. That's parked there. We do get I'm deeming it an allowable expense. I'll speak to that in a successive slide here. But if it makes it as an allowable expense, we will get some return on that expenditure. The other thing are the two kid accounts that we're using for East Elementary and Freedom software program that tracks our parent pickup. And I've got those parked there too. They could be parked over in safety. I've got them parked here because, again, if they make allowable expenses, we'll get a little bit of reimbursement. Unfortunately, it won't be much. So my commentary that's a little bit pessimistic will be just contained to this single slide. And the reason why I bring it out, it was on the slide last year. I'm going to bring it out again because it's starting to get a lot of attention at the legislature. So by the entitlement program of transportation, 75% of the district's eligible cost, which would equal that amount, if we took 75% of our eligible cost, that amount would equal $1.8 million. But we are not going to get that. That has been whittled and whittled and whittled for well over a decade and is down to currently at about 32%. This is the formula. That's actually the first page of the formula. It goes through two pages of formula, but DESE does that. We plug it in. Right now, we're projected to get about $576,000. I think if there's some place that this year will be hit, it'll be, well, I know if there is any withhold, they'll hit that first, and then we'll see if it comes out in the formula. Talking about the basic formula. So this is a place, though, that is getting a lot of attention for a couple for the primary reason is it's not fair for all the over 500 school districts. If you are a large school district, even with a small school population, you have to travel great distances, and you put a lot more out on transportation costs that are truly eligible transportation costs. There is one school district that's actually 1 square mile in the state of Missouri. Their allowable costs are virtually none. So if you pull money away from that school district, does it have much of an impact on them? Absolutely not. They don't have a lot going out. So it's a little unfair to rural districts. We're a fairly sizable district at over 170 square miles, so it does have an impact on us. That's obvious, and we're going to get this. We are actually entitled $1.8 million. Total expenditure, we're going to beat this for a few reasons. I think it's slightly overstated because we've budgeted conservatively and on revenue and expenditure side, but obviously we have $20 million committed out to this fiscal year, nearly $20 million just to the Waynesville Middle School project. If you subtract that off there on Fund 4, you get down to what we've been spending each year. And so revised budget summary. So this will look a little bit different than your ASBR, and this is the traditional budget summary that we've put in the district. I've kind of evolved this to maybe look a little more like the SBR. These are all just activity funds. They're good to look at. There's no problem with them, but they usually distract a little bit from just that basic overview. So this says FY18. The previous one said FY17. This is if everything makes out in the budget just as I've written it, where do we end? That number looks really good because that number is a slight, very minute increase from the FY17 slide. So that tells us that we're forecasting to land right around 25% reserves. That's a good news. Of course, we know that the number from the SBR is going to go down because we've got a $20 million, close to a $20 million deficit scheduled for capital outlay, but we're going to get a great product of that Waynesville Middle School. So we expect all the time for our capital outlay to go down, and of course it's going to, and that still gives us enough resources to consider future facility needs, which I'll also be bringing that long list to you during February retreat, so we'll be able to do a little prioritization of that long list of needs and see what we might be doing in the future years. budget development goals have been unchanged, and we certainly are committed to those and look forward to meeting our goals in the future years. Field any questions the board might have. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. What kind of increase do you anticipate with the health insurance this year?
The brief on that in a nutshell is our cost to claims ratio is not running as well as we'd like.
Yeah.
I actually have a Missouri Educators Trust meeting tomorrow. We do have one very sizable district that would increase our pool 1/3. It'd increase it, we run about a $70 million budget through Met. It would increase it by right at $20 million. That gives us a lot of purchasing power. If that makes, we're hoping that offsets our kind of poor cost to claims ratio. So, I'd be just reading tea leaves. I'd say there's a little good news and a little bad news, and we'll see where we're at in about 30 or 45 days because we'll start putting out our bids.
Any other comments or questions? May I have a motion to approve the January revision of the 2017-18 budget? Mr. Anderson makes that motion. Do I have a second? Dr. Fulmer seconds it. All those in favor? 6-0. Megan. 11B, annual school board election ballot. Dr. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. President. The final date to file for the Board of Education was today, January 16th, at 5 p.m. The proposed ballot format of board candidates for the April 3rd, 2018 election will be submitted to the Pulaski County Clerk prior to the deadline of January 23rd, 2018. You have a copy of that in your board docs. The 5 candidates are Paul D. Schultz II, Andy Anderson, Christopher Kramer, Alberto G. Reyes, and Janet K. Kreider. Would ask for your approval.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the recommendation? Mr. Keeling makes that motion. Mr. Schultz seconded it. All those in favor? 6-0. Megan. 11C, proposed job description, second reading. Mrs. Bales.
Thank you, Mr. President. The following attached job descriptions are presented for second reading. 4.09.4, Assistant Secretary, Director of Mission Activities, and Principal Secretary. 4.20.1, School Custodian. 4.20.3, School Head Custodian. 5.3.1, School Resource Officer. 5.3.2, Security Guard. Administration requests approval of the above job descriptions at this time, please.
Any questions or comments? Motion to approve the job description as presented.
Motion.
Mr. Schultz makes that motion. May I have a second? Mr. Quinn seconds it. All those in favor? 6-0. Megan. 11D, amend policy GCB, waive the first reading. Mrs. Bales.
Thank you, Mr. President. Attached for board's review and consideration is policy GCPB, resignation of professional staff members, which has been revised to include liquidated damages as discussed at the beginning of the year. Administration is requesting to waive the first reading, and if approved, this policy will take effect during the 2018-19 school year.
I have a motion to approve the amendment policies GCBP as presented. Dr. Fulmer makes that recommendation. Mr. Anderson seconds it. All those in favor? 6-0. All right, now we're going into closed session, closed record, closed vote as allowed by RSMO 610.021, Section 3, hiring and firing and discipline or promotion of employees, and Section 13, individual personnel records, performance ratings. May I have a motion go into closed session?
Make that motion.
Mr. Kinley makes that motion. May I have a second? Mr. Schultz, roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, 6-0. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? Mr. Anderson makes that motion. May I have a second? Dr. Fulmer seconds it. All those in favor? 6-0. Megan, we're adjourned to closed session.